Well, good morning, church. Pastor Mike, and I have spent the last couple of days sort of processing all that's going on in our world, praying, and have had a few conversations with our elders, and want to give you a Church of the Lakes response to all that's kind of going on right now, especially related to the coronavirus with everything that's going on. Jen and I went to the store yesterday, and a whole lot of things missing from the store, so there's this strange feeling right now, and I want to give you a few different scriptures that I think are appropriate for us in the way that we would respond as the church, and some of the things that we're going to do in response to the coronavirus, and even some things that what our government, specifically our president, have said in the last couple of days. So let me start, and if you have a Bible and you want to grab it, I'm going to be first verse I'm going to read is 2 Corinthians 1, starting in verse 8. It says this: "For we do not want you to be unaware, brothers, of the affliction we experienced in Asia." Now, this is Paul writing to the Corinthians, and I think there's an irony there that he had affliction in Asia, which is where we believe that this virus started. But what he's describing is that he went through a bunch of trials and afflictions, and he goes on to say, "For we were so utterly burdened beyond our strength that we despaired of life itself." Now, I don't think we're anywhere near that, and I hope you're not, because we're not living in fear. We're people of faith. But this is an extreme example of when you're in trial, kind of how to respond. And so Paul's writing about this to the Corinthians, and he says, "Indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death, but that was to make us rely not on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead." And I think that's our first reality that we need to respond in this scenario, is to not rely on ourselves and to get to that place of actual desperation. Fear gets to a new place of desperation, and then we start doing kind of over activities, as opposed to saying, "Okay, God, let me sit still for a minute and hear you. Let me read your word. What do you want me to do next?" Even in the middle of what kind of looks chaotic in my life. It says, "But it was to make us rely on ourselves, not on ourselves, but on God who raised the dead. He delivered us from such a deadly peril." He delivered us. Catch this. "And he will deliver us. On him we have set our hopes that he will deliver us again." In other words, God is, right, and was, and always will be. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. In other words, God is going to deliver his people. And I think we have to stand on that as a promise and look at this pandemic and say, let's put it in its proper perspective. It is very small as compared to who our God is. And then it goes on, it says, "You also must help us by prayer, so that many will give thanks on behalf of the blessings granted us through the prayer of many." So a couple things in that verse that jumped out that I felt like God was saying for us to hear as a church. One is the reliance on God. Be careful about where your mind goes, right? We talked Sunday about mastering your mind in chaos, that we make sure we're relying on God and not ourselves or men or our prepper mentality that we may have taken on through this whole thing. The second is a call to prayer. So here's what I'm going to do. Monday morning, I want to start with 5 a.m. prayer again. Like we did 21 days of prayer and fasting. Some of you actually asked me not to stop when we got to the end of 21 days of prayer and fasting. We're going to do it again. I think this is something that God's people should do, that we should gather. So 5 a.m., I'll be live on Facebook. You can join me then. We will then post it on YouTube right after, or you can watch it anytime during the day. But we're going to just put out a call to our church to be praying. We're going to go through prayer and fasting again during this time period for wisdom, for especially for those that are affected, for those that are sick, and then for our first responders and our medical teams and our authorities that are making decisions and all. So plan to join me, if you will, on Monday, 5 a.m. or thereafter, and we'll do that probably for an indefinite time period right now, until we see what's next. Another verse that I want to read to you, Romans 13, 1 through 7. "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God." Our authorities have been instituted by God. "Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment." That's a pretty strong statement that the verse makes there. It goes on in verse 5. I'm skipping down a little bit. And again, this is in Romans 13, verse 5. Therefore, one must be in subjection, not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. I'm going to come back to that in a second. For the sake of conscience. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for the authorities are ministers of God, attending to this very thing. Pay to all what is owed to them. Taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, and honor to whom honor is owed. That kind of goes back to what we talked about Sunday about mastering our morals, right? That we're doing the right thing even in what might be a chaotic time. But I want to accent a few things in this verse that God was saying to me. We are to submit to our authorities as long as there's not some direct conflict with what God says. And so the president, for the last 2 days, has asked that there would be a social distancing, which is the term they're using, so that there are no gatherings larger than 10 people. So because of that, we are going to submit to our authority. And what I want to say to you is Sunday, we will not gather in the Leesburg High School auditorium altogether. Instead, we will be putting together an online scenario so that you can get online at 10 a.m. on Sunday, and we will have word, we'll have a little bit of worship. We're still working on how we do that creatively so that it is a good experience for you and your family. We're also going to work with our Right Now Media to look at what can be done for kids. So we're in chronological teaching for our kids, and so we'd like to give suggestions on Right Now Media of what you can give to your kids while you're watching adult service. Give them the Right Now Media, that will keep them in line with the chronology of what we're doing in our kids ministry. So we'll put out more information on that, but I want to tell you what we're doing and just kind of get you prepared that we're not gathering together on Sunday in the auditorium, but we'll do an online experience. We also, because of this, are going to postpone youth and also the opening of the Thrive Center. Now I got to tell you, it kind of breaks my heart. The gathering on Sunday, the Thrive Center, we've been excited about that forever. But again, I think this is submitting to authority. And honestly, the reason that they're calling for social distancing is because it's a social responsibility. Surgeon General says 97% of people that get it are going to be fine. Like, that's not the issue. The issue is, number one, our elderly and the danger towards them. But the other one is us overwhelming our healthcare industry, overwhelming our hospitals. And so this is just us being, I think, socially responsible, putting our neighbors over ourselves, which Jesus has called us to do. And so that's the kind of the way that we want to go. Now with small groups, we want to suggest that for some of you, you may still want to get together. If it's a group that's 5, 6, 7, 8, less than 10 type of scenario, there is nothing wrong with gathering together, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. So I'm going to leave it up to small groups for you guys to determine. Now, in that, please wash your hands. If you're feeling a little sick, don't go to small group, those kind of things. But we're going to need each other through this time period. Speaking of which, one more verse that I think God wanted me to share. Hebrews 10, 23 through 25 says, "Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering." Right? For he who promised is faithful. We got to stand on that promise and that reality that God's faithful. He is who he is. God is still sovereign and still sitting on his throne, right? We say it all the time in church. He did not come flying up off his throne and go, "Oh my gosh, coronavirus, what now?" No, he knows, and he has the story completely under control. Verse 24, "And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works." Boy, there's the calling of the church, right? That we are supposed to stir each other to love and good works. There are good works, and there is love to be given through this crisis that the church needs to rise up and do and be. In other words, it's not just about a Sunday morning. Matter of fact, I'd say it this way. I don't think that a church should be defined by its Sunday morning. I think a church that should be defined by its love and good works, by actually what it does to reach and serve, reach the lost, and love and serve their community. Goes on to say, and it says this, "Not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." I believe this is a word that we're not going against in not gathering Sunday morning, but that I'm calling you to gather in different and creative ways. I think we can do it both ways. I think we can come together in small groups. I think, we've got social media. Oh my gosh, technology. I mean, Jen's recording this on my iPhone right now. You can FaceTime people. You can have conference calls. You can get together with folks. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to ask us to do that in a whole new push. In other words, I want you to think about every day. A couple people from the church that maybe you can touch base with. Hey, how you doing today? How you feeling? What's God been saying to you? Did you read your Bible today? What'd you read? And just that would be the church, right? Pulling together and supporting one another in that. Let's consider the people in our church that may need help. Let's consider checking up on our elderly and those to make sure they're healthy and everything's good and they've got what they need. Maybe a little bit harder with the stores being what they are right now. Maybe a little bit harder for them to get what they need. So this is the time for the church to gather together. And I don't think that necessarily has to be a Sunday service. That's just kind of American tradition. But the reality being is the church can gather. We are called to gather. And I think we need to do both. I think we need to gather creatively while physically distancing ourselves for the safety and betterment of our entire culture, right? And our surrounding community. We live in Central Florida, and especially in our area, there is a lot of older folks. So it is just socially responsible. While I'm kind of bummed, to be honest, not to see you on Sunday morning physically, I think it's the right thing for us to do and important for us to not only gather together and stay connected as much as we can, but then also to physically distance ourselves while we are submitting to what our authorities and complying to what they have asked us to do. Now let me say this as I finish. If there's any of you and you are struggling with depression or fear, if you've gone to the store and you've seen the shelves and you're letting some of that really kind of affect you, we're here and you need to reach out to someone. And we would love to have the opportunity to encourage you and to remind you who your God is, that He is bigger and greater than all things, that there is something way bigger in the unseen than what is in the seen right now, than what we can see with our own eyes. And so know this, God is sovereign, sitting on the throne, in control of all things, including this story. It's going to be an amazing time. I have a picture in my head of years from now, us telling stories to the next generation of what it looked like for the church to rise up in what looked chaotic and what looked kind of panic and fearful and all these type of things, that the church all of a sudden was creative in the way that it stayed the church and gathered and encouraged each other and pushed and spawned each other on to love, right, and to good works. And so let's do that. Let's do that. Let's make sure that we are daily thinking about, how do I love and be a part of the church? The church is not a building we gather at a high school. The church is me and you, the people, right? And so let's be the church through all of this. And I look forward to seeing you Sunday, 10 a.m. online. And then also we'll start on Monday morning, 5 a.m. with prayer. And as things update, there'll be more videos. We'll probably send you another video to explain exactly what Sunday looks like. And then 5 a.m. prayer will also give us the opportunity to have daily updates. We're going to do this for 2 weeks. The president asked for 15 days, which was 2 days ago, so it's now 13 days. So we're going to do this for 2 Sundays, and then we're going to see what our authorities tell us and how far they've come in combating the virus and what is healthy for us as a nation and as a community. So thank you for being the church. Thank you for reaching out, loving on each other, doing the things that we need to do to make sure that we help those who are struggling and in need. And again, if you have any issues whatsoever, please don't hesitate to call us at the church office. Let us support you through the process, and just know God has it all under control.